Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to the Frontline with Joe and Joe Pasillo and Joe Rossinello. And once more, brothers and sisters, let us go into the breach. Joe Rossinello, not for anything, okay? Robert F. Kennedy Jr. seems to be the talk of the town. You got Tucker. We did our video on Tucker Carlson. So in that area, but RFK is creating a little bit of a splash. I think that you and I, particularly as Catholics, okay, and this is not going to be a Catholic video, but I do want to approach this and address some Catholics out there. Because, Joe, I can already hear the chorus out there. And we'll break it down about how we should, RFK Jr. is a moderate. We should get behind him. He's a voice of reason in a party that's lost all his reason. Okay, maybe that's true to a degree. Okay, I can see why people think that. So let's play a clip of him with Tucker Carlson. We're not going to play the whole clip, but we do want to play what we think is a pertinent part of that. And Joe and I are going to come back and we're going to break down RFK Jr. a little bit.
Vaccine nut, but watching your course being dismissed as a vaccine nut, but watching your announcement today, it wasn't about pharma even so much as it was about America's place in the world and what do we do about it. If you wouldn't mind summarizing for our viewers where you think we are and what you think we ought to do.
Well, I gave a long speech, Tucker, and thank you again for having me on.
Of course.
And for that very kind of an introduction. I think that the general theme of my speech was this corrupt merger of state and corporate power, which is turning our country into a corporate kleptocracy, into a system of socialism for the rich, and this kind of a cushy socialism for the rich, and this kind of brutal, merciless capitalism for the poor. It keeps us in a state of war. It bails out banks at the same time that last month, the United States government told 30 million people it was cutting their their food stamp checks by 90%. It took 15 million people off of Medicare. The same month, it gave $300 million to the Silicon Valley Bank, and tapped up the cost of the Ukraine war to $113 billion. We're sending $113 billion to the Ukraine. The entire budget of EPA is $12 billion. The budget of CDC is $11 billion. We have 57% of American citizens could not put their hands on $1,000 if they have an emergency. A quarter of our citizens are hungry. So we're cutting welfare and food stamps by 90%. And we're bailing out the bankers. We're paying for a war that we can't afford. And with the way that we do this is by printing money. We've printed 10 centuries of money in the last 14 years, and that caused the inflation, which raises.
Let's leave it there for a second, Joe, because he goes on to talk about the Ukraine, the fact that his son is fighting there. About showing compassion. He doesn't sound, what do you call it? He's not demagoguing. I guess that's the right word. The Ukraine, the war, but he is talking about spending $115 billion. He also goes on to say how we are compassionate. I've made clear I'm not for this war. But I am certainly in favor of helping the people of the Ukraine and trying to come down to some sort of an agreement or some sort of a peace agreement with Putin. There's got to be a solution. It can't just be we're going to war. Let's leave that aside for a second. Let's start with this. Does he represent, Joe, to you, someone who we just did a clip on Tucker Carlson talking about the necessity of debate? He strikes me, let's talk about the positives. He strikes me as somebody who you could have a debate with. I will give Robert F. Kennedy Jr. that much credit to say he's willing to talk about his ideas and your ideas and have a civil conversation. Let's start there. I think that's the case with RFK Jr. I'm going to give him that much credit.
That's exactly why the Democrats don't want him and won't want him. He has no chance. I have more of a chance of becoming their candidate.
You really believe
I have no chance.
You don't believe he's got a chance at the nomination?
Zero. They're not interested in common sense. He made too much sense. Their party is not about sense. And I'm going to tell you the killer of him right there. He mentioned the merger between corporations and governments. That's called ESG, environmental social governance, which is coming out of the World Economic Forum. That's what everyone in the West, i.e. the governments, are all about. You mention that, he's done. Goodbye. Goodbye. Because that is how they get around our Constitution. That is how they do what they do. You're weaponizing corporate America against the very people the state were basically established to help them have a structure. You get around it through the corporation and you strangle the people, and you do it legally.
Well, he made a very good point. We are spending tens of billions of dollars, over $100 billion, on a war that most Americans are not in favor of. Okay. And yeah, why are we bailing out Silicon Valley Bank? I mean, we're back in 2008 now having the same argument. Why are you bailing out a bank? Joe, do you know that the government stepped in and they insured all the deposits of that bank, not just the ones under $250,000? And he's exactly right. Now, you and I, we approach things from a conservative Catholic point of view. The Catholic bothers a lot of people. We believe in at least a minimal social safety net, okay? No American should starve. We should help people get back on their feet. We should have the conditions in America wherein people could go to work and raise their families. People fall sometimes. People stumble. People need help. I'm all in favor of helping people. I don't think, and I think I speak for all conservatives out there, welfare, food stamps, none of it should ever become a way of life, ever, okay? But to help people, he's right. You cut food stamps for people by 90%, and you're bailing out Silicon Valley Bank, and you're going to...
I think that's... I don't want to get off on a topic, but, dude, people have accounts at banks. You're bailing out people because they're losing their money.
No, Joe, but I agree with you on that. But here was my larger point. The FDIC insures your account up to $250,000. That's by law. We know that, okay? They went out and they bailed out those who have way more than $200,000. They bailed out everybody. All the Silicon Valley people that do their banking there at that bank, they bailed out everybody. Now, that's not what the FDIC was to insure. The FDIC was there created to insure what you just said. If I have $100,000 in the bank and I'm insured by the FDIC, if the bank goes under, my account's protected. A larger bank comes in, scoops up the bank's assets. I now become an account holder at that bank. I get what you're saying. That's a whole other conversation. My point is this. We're wasting all this money. We're bailing people out. We're bailing out the Ukrainian regime. And at the same time, we have people that say, for argument's sake, like he mentioned, Medicare, people getting cuts in Medicare and food stamps. I don't think that that's right either.
Well, I will say this. I don't think he has a chance. I think he has some good points. He mentioned censorship, which I think is something that's very pervasive right now in the West. He says basically that if you are a censor, people who have done this in the past are never good guys. He's 100% correct. More reason why he doesn't have a chance. Because the Democratic Party, sadly, the radical left, which controls the Democratic Party. I'm not being biased. They control your party.
That's the plain as the nose on your face.
They have to use censorship because the lie has lost its power. They have to use censorship because in social media, there is free speech and they can't have that. It's disinformation. You're a hater. You're a racist. Or we completely shut it off. Facebook has admitted they did that during the last election. Again, not my words, theirs. And no one cares because it's not about equity. It's not about democracy. It's about power. You see, all of this is about power. And too many people are okay with it because it now favors my side. Well, I got news for you. Politics flips. 15 years from now, 20 years from now, an event could take place. It could be a geopolitical event. It could be a catastrophe of some sort, which changes the political temperature. And it could be 1,000,000 times worse for you.
Right.
What we're seeing in America and throughout the West is dangerous. Many intellectuals have warned the populace. Of course, it's ignored. He will be ignored by his own party. He has no chance because people are not interested in facts. They're not interested in logic. And frankly, nor are the people who are pulling the levers of power. They're interested in changing the ideology. And he hit it right on the head. You see the rich who basically are living a wonderful life, and the middle class down are struggling. It's only going to get worse. What you're seeing in California is going to make its way right across the country, just like that balloon, that Chinese balloon. And when it does, maybe then people will wake up. But sadly, Joe, their eyes are shut, their heads in the sand.
The other thing that they want, Joe Rossinello, if you're just joining us at the Frontline with Joe and Joe, please like us on Twitter, follow us everywhere you see us, help us out a little bit, particularly share this video. I think the other thing, too, is I love your comments. They're not going to be able, regardless of, we would probably agree with, I can't agree with anybody in the Democrat Party right now. I probably can find a handful of issues that I can agree with RFK. The corporatism, the fascism that's going on, the marriage of government power and corporate power. I agree with you. He's pointing that out. In that way, I believe he is an old school Democrat. I could find things to agree with RFK. Here's the thing. I think that's what scares them too. They're not going to be able to control him that like they are this guy that's in the Oval Office right now. Joe Biden is a puppet. That's not me being just hyperbolic about it. He's a puppet. Joe Biden doesn't have a mind of his own. And the bottom line is RFK does. And he's shown that. He's shown that. That he's willing to go against his party. So the lack of being able to control him, I think, is an important aspect. What do you say about that?
He's the iteration of Howard Schultz. He was going to run as an independent. Howard Schultz is a Democrat, and he couldn't run as a Democrat because his party didn't want him. So he was going to run as an independent. He got cancer. He had to drop out. For those who don't know who Howard Schultz is or was when he was in the political arena, he was the CEO of Starbucks. They're not interested in that.
Right.
They're not interested in common sense. It's people, this is not conspiracy. And it's about time people start waking up, because the sad reality is this. If you are not in the upper echelons of society, you're in the middle class and you are a quote unquote Democrat. That's how you vote. You're white, you're black, you're Catholic, you're Jewish, you're Muslim, you're an atheist. It doesn't matter. You are getting destroyed.
Wrecked.
They are destroying you. And you're supporting people because you basically have a political identity that's who you are. Well, I got news for you. The people that you support are going to destroy you. Mark my words right now, because they are absolutely, and you know something, I'm going to tell you another thing. We've been doing this for 5 years. Everything that Joe Biden is doing, Joe Basil and I said, you can listen to it. It's on tape.
Yep.
We said it all. And he's doing it. He's not a moderate, all of which was stated. And I say that now, not to say that we were right. I say that now because you should listen to what I'm telling you.
You want to see an example? You want a great example of what they're going to do to RFK? Go when you get a chance. Don't leave the front line with Joe and Joe. When you get a chance, go look at the exchange between Bernie Sanders, a Jewish man from Brooklyn, against Howard Schultz, a Jewish man from Brooklyn, when Sanders was putting the screws to him like he was Attila the Hun, like he was some sort of right-wing ideologue. Howard Schultz is a Democrat. Now, I don't particularly like Howard Schultz. I think his company is a pagan company. I think they've done anti-Christian things. Leaving that aside, okay? Talk about politically. Howard Schultz is a Democrat. He's pro-abortion. 100%. He doesn't care about gay marriage. He doesn't care about any of it. But he doesn't fall in complete lockstep. Go look at what Bernie Sanders, how he treated Howard Schultz, and that'll show you exactly how they're going to treat RFK. They are not Democrats. Now, Joe, I'm not going to vote. I want to throw, in the last couple minutes, I want to throw this out to you because I think this is important. I could hear the chorus out there. Don't you now have second thoughts about voting for Donald Trump? RFK Jr. is in the race. And my answer is, I like RFK Jr. I'm sure I could agree with him on a couple things. I don't think he's insane like the party is, as you just alluded to, okay? But I ain't voting for him. And I can't find any reason to vote for him over Donald Trump. I'm not going to lie to you right now, particularly on abortion, because RFK, I don't know if he's a moderate on that, but I do know he's pro-abortion. And he is pro-globalist on the environmental issues too. He's all in for climate change and all that. So in that regard, if I'm given the choice between RFK and Bernie Sanders, I'm going to vote for RFK. All right. But if I'm given the choice between RFK and Donald Trump, I'm voting for Donald Trump.
Seeing the Kennedy name makes me itch, to be honest with you. I mean, political families come and go. They had their time. Go away, if you ask me. I think he has something to say, but as far as becoming the president, go away. Clintons, go away. Bushes, go away. I can't wait till the Obamas, go away.
Right.
I've had it with these political families. America, Canada, Europe, you need outsiders. You need people that represent people, not the uniparty, not the establishment, that are willing to do things to help who? People. And the establishment won't let that happen. People have to see that clearer. They're starting to. They should start opening their eyes. They have to put their political identity hat down, because again, you are getting bulldozed. Talk to people in Canada. They can't buy food, Joe.
I know.
You don't show a Republican or Democratic card to buy food. They can't buy food. And that is exactly the type of situation due to inflation. Don't think that can't happen here, people. Don't think this is Canada. It's a G7 nation.
Right.
This isn't Paraguay. Not that that's a good thing if it happens in Paraguay, but it's a G7 nation. People can't buy food.
Joe, let me leave you with this. If you want to see what the Democrat Party is going to do to RFK in the primaries, go look at what they did to Bernie Sanders, and then you'll see what they're going to do to RFK. They're going to rob him to say, hey, listen, I wouldn't vote for Bernie Sanders on my worst day, but the fact is Bernie Sanders was robbed. And the fact is he was robbed again by Clyburn in South Carolina when he resurrected Joe Biden. And they're going to do the same thing to RFK. You mentioned the people. I'll leave you with this, okay? RFK is much more in tune as a Democrat with people's concerns, the average person's concerns, than the rest of the Democrat Party. And that spells disaster for him. Joe Resinello, let's keep it moving.
Not, and that's another thing people have to get through their head. They don't care about you.
That's
they
right.
care about an ideology, people. Get it through your head. When Barack Obama said change, he meant it.
Yeah.
And it's an ideological change, a shift in how America operates. And by the way, you're not in the equation.
Yeah, that's right. Thanks for joining us at the Frontline with Joe and Joe. Joe Pasillo, Joe Resinello in the breach. Please, wherever you see this video, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, do what you can to help us out. Like, subscribe, share, and all that. We'll talk to you soon.